My name is Ryley, and you are listening to the Ryley Heppner podcast. Can you remember what first drew you to the water and to wakeboarding as a sport in general? I'm sure you get asked that a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, not that much, and I like it as an opener. But I, I, to this day, I still love just being in the water,
Okay.
and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit more later. But I had the opportunity to take a woman, like probably in her 40s or 50s, this last summer, who had never been in water before,
Oh, wow.
and so I got to process like, why do we like water so much?
Hmm.
And the feeling of weightlessness and the 3D environment that we get to exist in water. And so there's so many different reasons. But I love just being in and around the water ever since I was a kid. That really started, growing up in the Southern California coastline. I was like 10 minutes, 15 minutes from the beach in Orange County, California. So getting out to the waves, getting to the lake eventually when I was 8 years old is the first time I got on water skis. And in fact, I got them sitting over there. I just found my first pair of water skis at this
Oh, that's sweet.
resale shop in Salt Lake City.
You
And
found yours at a used shop?
I want to believe that they are. You want to see them? You want to see
That'd be
them?
awesome.
They were sitting like this place is full of snow skis and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And snow skis, snowboards, and everything. And then I see three pair of water skis sitting there. And I'm like looking across the store. It's long, it's a massive place. And I look and then I see these things.
Oh, sick.
And this is like I said, I want to believe they were mine, but
Yeah.
it was in Salt Lake City and um,
Oh, that's cool.
they weren't, but I saw those. And so that was my first pair of water skis, 8 years old. And ever since I haven't looked back and I've always just tried to find myself go to the water.
Were your parents hardcore slalom skiers and stuff?
Not whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah, it was something where we went out on a friend's boat, and then my dad got us our own boat that came with a couple pairs of skis, and those
Okay.
Captain Kid ones I just showed you, those were one of the pairs that came with our boat when we bought it.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
that's cool. Was there
we got it.
something at some point different about a lake, even than the ocean in Southern California?
So we would travel, like I grew up in Scout, so I did a lot of camping.
Yeah.
But then when I wasn't with the Scout troop, we would camp as a family for months at a time up and down California. So we would go up to all these different lakes, and like in California, you got to search it out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But the first time I ever got on a scurfer was in 1987. I was 11 years old. We rented a scurfer and took it out for a rip, and it actually took me a few times to get up on it, but once I figured it out, like I was standing sideways, I was like, oh, this is cool, I like this is like
We,
surfing behind the boat. But I still did all sorts of stuff. We were barefooting a lot at the time,
yeah.
and yeah, so like just any way we could get out on the water, and we literally would pull up to a shoreline, set up a tent, and that was our summer.
Oh, that's sweet. But
Yeah.
even to this day now, like, is it a little bit for you? Is it even more, I don't know, fulfilling or something about being in the lake versus an ocean, or is it any water?
Kind of any water.
Okay.
You want to know the funny thing is about being out in the ocean? I love being in the ocean, but if I'm out in a boat in the ocean and there's heavy seas,
Yeah.
I get motion sick a lot of
Okay.
times. It's kind of weird, like considering I can throw my body in a bunch of different directions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fully get seasick, like if the conditions are a little bit, not so conducive.
Who are some early influences in those, even the Scurfer days, or just moving beyond that?
The first person that I ever saw that I was like, oh, I want that kind of control, his name was Mike Siderhout. And
Okay.
if you're familiar with Kason Siderhout, he's like a cable rider, California kid. It's his dad.
Oh,
And
nice.
this was before he was born, but he was a clown in the water ski show at Lake Shasta. And I literally have the VHS tape from when I saw him, and I can still see it in my head. And I watched the tape. I'm like, yep, that's what I saw.
Oh, that's cool.
And so he came by on these things that are called like hot dog skis that
Yeah.
they literally were like shaped like hot dogs, where he would just twist and turn, and his comfort on the water, I was like, that's awesome. I want to have that. And so that really drew me into just the fun side of riding, and being behind the boat. And then wakeboarding came around. Originally surfing, then ski boarding. And the first guys that I saw that were really going like, all right, that looks cool was Eric Perez, Darren Shapiro, um, Jeff here, Jeremy Kovac, Dean Lavelle, Scott Byerly, Gator, and the list kind of goes on.
Yeah.
Kobe, Mike, you know. But I think it was when I saw Darren do like the Raley and then air flips. I was like, what is happening? This guy's using a different set of physics. Like, what's going on?
There's not a huge age difference probably between you and that whole group though, right?
No, no,
Okay.
no. Those guys, like, I was actually I haven't chatted with Dean in so long. He literally just texted me a minute ago. Dean
Oh,
Lavelle.
sweet.
He took me under his wing for a while. He was my roommate, kind of my big brother in the sport. I think he said he just turned 52,
Okay.
53. Um, and Darren is, yeah, 51-ish. I'm 48. I'll be 49 in April.
So you were watching contemporaries to some degree.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember I was watching ESPN Hot Summer Nights. So it'd be like you have to watch it in the middle of the night, record it on VHS. And I would see these guys compete on the tour, like
Yeah.
along with the water skiers, when they started to get their foot in the door. And I would just always see what those guys were doing, and never considered myself to be able to do that, to get to that level. But one day my mom walked through the living room while I'm watching it. She goes, "You could go beat those guys." I was like, "Yeah, right." Like, no way. And here I am.
Was that a
30.
huge moment though to have like your mom's, was that a pivotal thing to have? I mean, you still remember it to have your
I
mom's
mean,
almost support or
I really felt like it was kind of that Brady Bunch answer that she just kind of gave me the "you can do it," and
okay.
the pivotal moment for me was, kind of fast forwarding a little bit. I moved from Southern California to St. Louis, and when we moved there, we moved on to a lake, and that was my middle school, high school years.
Okay.
And so when we moved on to lake, it was like all the time out on the water. That's when it went from surfing to ski boarding. And it was in 1994 that I went to college down in Florida, because I heard if you went to college in Florida, you could be on a water ski team. I'm like, I don't know how to compete 3 event, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And while I was gearing up to go to college, I went and coached at a ski school. And it's now, called the World Wakeboard Center. Andy Hansen, I don't know if he's still running it, but it used to be called Benzel's. So if you're familiar with Kobe Mikasic, his wife
Yep.
Tara Mikasic was Tara Benzel.
Okay.
She was a little girl, and her dad had just sold the school. So I was coaching at that ski school as a ski board coach and a 3 event coach. I was kind of getting into 3 event. And Eric Perez came to the school as a guest coach. And he's a big name in the sport. And he saw me ride, and they just came out with a twin tip, the BAF, the Hyperlight BAF. And he goes, "Hey, try this board out and go down the road, and there's a competition. It's called the Masters Qualifier." I didn't know what that meant, but it was for the Masters competition, like, which goes on every Memorial Day. So I go to this contest, and all of a sudden I see all these dudes that I've seen. Scott Byerly, like, I think Darren had a buy into it, but is Gator, Mike, Dean, like all these guys had to compete there to
Yep.
get into the Masters. And so now I'm competing against him, and it's a 2-day event. First day, I actually did pretty good. And I saw my name in the running order with him. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I'm like going against these guys. And then it goes to the next day, and I totally blew it. Like, just absolutely blew it. But as I was kind of feeling defeated, whatever, but I had nothing really to gain, nothing to lose. And so I was just like, let's just see what can happen. So I'm leaving. And this guy, the pivotal moment, this guy comes up to me in the parking lot as I'm getting into my Volkswagen Bug. And if you ever saw like the bug board, that's like came from a bug board.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like standing there, like getting ready to grab the door handle, and this guy comes up and he introduces me, or introduces himself to me. His name's Tom. He goes, "Hey, I'm Tom James. I'm the editor of Wakeboard Magazine." I'm like, I've seen this guy's name. Now I'm seeing him in person. Like, this is crazy. And he goes, "You're really good. You should compete on tour. That's different than your mom telling you."
Yeah.
And so when he said that, my dad happened to be there, and he's still living in St. Louis, but he came down to watch me compete. He was a pilot for a commercial airline, TWA. So he came down to watch. And he's on the other side of the car. And so, we meet and everything. And so my dad and I get in the car, and we're like, "Well, what do we do? I guess we got to research this and figure out how to go compete on tour." There's no internet. Like, this is like, go look it up in the phone book or get somebody's phone number, right?
Sure.
Like, figure this out. This is 1994,
Okay.
95, 95. And so I just started going to tour stops. And it was through that season, I was kind of learning the ins and outs of being a competitor on the tour and what it would take. And it was in Portland that I made it into the finals.
Okay.
And I don't remember what place I got, but I do remember standing up in this specific spot in this big asphalt area right near the bathrooms. And the reason I remember it is because I had Herb O'Brien, HO Hyperlight, everybody from Hyperlight. It was Herb O'Brien, Guy Phillip, Paul O'Brien, Eddie Roberts. All these guys came up to me and introduced themselves like, "Hey, we're Hyperlight. We want to sponsor you." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no way. This is crazy. I made it to the finals. Like it's happening right now. I'm gonna get sponsored." They go, "We want you to go to the next tourist stop in Seattle, and if you want to sit down, sign a contract." So flew up to Seattle, signed a contract with them, and totally blew it the next stop. Didn't make it in the finals. I was like, I hope they still want to sponsor me, and did my first photo shoot up at Radar Lake that weekend. And so that's when I became the fourth rider on the team because it was Darren, Dean, Jeff here, and now I'm the new kid on the
Oh
dock.
man.
Yeah, I was 19 years old.
Can I ask you just as a fan, how awesome was Radar Lake?
It was unreal. It's kind of like a cartoon of a lake.
Okay.
Like it's surreal. You're on a mountaintop and you can see like it's Rainier and Mount Hood, I think the other like you can see everything from this place. And at the time there weren't many neighborhoods built up around it. They definitely have now.
Yeah.
But you can't see the neighborhood because you're up on this mountaintop and it's unreal. It's a cartoon of a place.
Like to people watching, to just fans, people watching. I can't remember what the video that was pretty much all at Radar Lake that was like before All or Nothing or something like that. But it just
With
looked like this secret
welcome,
city. Oh yeah, welcome. There you go.
well,
I
yeah,
mean, it looked like there was nothing around.
it
Just
feels
go
that way.
back and forth. The fun you guys looked like you had just camping and
Oh, dude, campfires at night. Like we played campfire Jenga. That was like crazy. Like we would stack logs until they were 6, 7 feet high, and like just the games and the mayhem on and off the water there is pretty awesome.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, Shaun, you've had a lot of, I don't know, game-changing innovations kind of through your years. Is there one contribution that you're most proud of, whether it be, I don't know, Detention series or Wakeboarding Unleashed or other one?
I mentioning detention, I don't know if I would have necessarily thought of that, but that probably is it.
Okay.
That was because of a good friend of mine who at first started was a sponsor of mine. If you remember, Spoon Watches,
Yeah.
he was my team manager for them, and
Okay.
Digit 3 Shoes. And it was in 1998, literally on the other side of this wall, that he sat down and he's like, "You should make an instructional video. I want to help you make it." And so I was like, "All right." Like I like teaching, and but my stipulation is I want to make it fun,
Yep.
and I didn't want it to be dry because all of the instructional videos were pretty like monotone. As you cut into the wake, grab the handle. I was like, these things are putting me to sleep. So around that time, The Nutty Professor was a big movie,
Okay.
and Eddie Murphy played all these different characters. So I kind of took some of that idea where I played all of these different characters in a classroom, and that was uh, most of '98. We shot a lot here. We shot everything here,
Okay.
and then a couple scenes out in California, but all of the classroom stuff was out in California.
Okay.
And that's a whole nother story. I'll save you the details, but it was a wild night. All the classroom stuff was literally from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
Okay.
We shot it one night. But that we had an amazing response. Like the amount of people that I've heard back that they used to watch that, that's awesome. That means that many people got like out on the water
Yeah.
and watched it. It went from VHS to then DVD. Then we reproduced it into another series, into the 3 disc DVD set, which then turned into an app. The app we then had it crash, so we paid another company to rebuild it, to develop it. That kept crashing. So then that's when things changed for me, because I was like, I have all this content, and we've had a good run with it. And we've got so many different people, and the app allowed us to see how many people across the world. When
Oh,
you're
sure.
selling VHS and DVDs, you can't really track that. You see the app, you see exactly where it's going, and it was all over the world. I mean, some random places too, like in the middle of Africa. And like, this is really cool to see. And when the app started to give us trouble and people were like paying for it and it wasn't working, I was like, I don't want that. I want people to have this content. So where do I put it? Well, at the same time, Instagram had gone from pictures to 15-second reels. They didn't call them that yet, but 15-second videos. Then they went to 60-second videos. When they made that leap, that was around the same time that I was like, I want to put all of my instructional videos somewhere that people can see it. Uh, but where do I put it? And at the time, it was like 50-50. Do you put it on Facebook or do you put it on YouTube? And I was like, I'll put it on YouTube. And I'm liking editing. And so I was like, I'm going to start doing like little vlog stuff. So I went down to JD Webb's was my first one. Then I went to Jimmy LaRich's house. I did a second one. I was like, I'm enjoying editing because I actually first learned to edit in the Detention series on
Okay.
VHS. That was the first time, like in '98, I learned how to edit. And I really liked the storytelling and making every frame count. And so as this started to happen, I'm like, I want to just upload this stuff so that everybody can just have it and just go watch it and just get it out there for free. And so that's really what kicked off me going into YouTube. But I made a conscious decision. I literally would say out loud, like, I'm not going to be a YouTuber. Like, that is a whole different life. That's a whole different commitment. I'm not going to put that pressure on myself. I still just need to be a wakeboarder,
Yeah.
And when I want to, and things naturally produce and like feel like I've got an idea, I want to share that, I'll
Yeah.
go and put it on YouTube. And then it was about 4 years ago that I was like, I think I can do a video a week.
Okay.
And that's my goal. I have a lot of other commitments. I travel a bunch. So I'm going to give myself grace, but I'm going to try to go one a week. And I've stayed on pace for that. I'll miss a week here and sometimes I'll throw two out in a week or three out in a week. And so I try to like have that, 50 videos a year kind of thing. Um, but I've really enjoyed that, like having the ability to say, here's a message I want to share with people.
Yeah.
And now I have that direct connection. Before it used to just be like, hey, show this product in the way that we want it to and where we do it and how we
Yeah.
want to say it somewhat. So I've really enjoyed that. I really have.
That's sweet, man. I mean, I think Detention was super innovative, but even now that it's like that your, I don't know, new transformed career has come out of that is cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is funny. It's the things that you learn by explaining them. Like I haven't really thought about that, but that
Yeah.
was like pivotal for me and the sport. Um, but yeah, it was fun. But I really like how I was able just to have fun with it
Yeah.
and just be me and be goofy.
I
Um,
watch you for fun these days, less for the instructional. But like back in the day, I mean, the instructional changed my wakeboarding game.
oh,
Like before that, O'Brien had class in session, which was a
yep,
little more monotone, but it was cool because I was watching guys I was looking up to, and like
yeah,
Thomas Harrell was in that, and
yeah.
I can't remember a bunch of old guys. But then Detention came out, and I never made that Nutty Professor connection, but that made sense now. But it was just a whole different thing.
It was wild. Like we literally had to go poach a conference room
Okay.
at Ron Seidenglanz, if you know the name, like he's one of the
Yeah.
best editors in the business. He worked at the studios where they used to edit like Murphy Brown, The Simpsons, a bunch of that
Okay.
stuff. And he was an editor there, and so he did wakeboard stuff on the side. And so we needed a classroom, so we went and bought a chalkboard and desks and decorations, and we literally snuck in there at night and set up a classroom
Oh,
and
that's
shot
sweet.
10 p.m. to 4 a.m. So I literally was bouncing off the walls in my head.
That's cool too. I didn't know Ron not just dabbled. I mean, had a career in
Yeah.
actual like not wakeboard film. Maybe that's why his wakeboard films are so good.
Yeah.
Uh, any favorite wakeboarding project? Any edit that sits out for you?
Um, Gosh, there's different ones for different reasons. Like any
Okay.
of them up at Radar, those were always
Yeah.
amazing. You're like camping or living in one of the houses there on the shoreline, creating some with some of the best writers, just very concentrated.
Can I ask you specifically about that? Were you blown away at all, like when they in Welcome when they made that? I don't even know what to call
That
it.
was the best.
Like the
And
longest kind of
yes,
tabletop down, flat down, flat down.
there were two rails in that video you're talking about. The M rail was one of the coolest feelings on a wakeboard. You
Okay.
just go up, you gap it, and then you just like have this perfect transition and long ride down. It was a crazy long rail. So to get the whole thing front to back was not easy.
Okay.
And when you did, it just felt so good. And I think I backlipped it. I was like, I'm not until I backlip this thing. And then that
Okay.
big transfer where I hit that thing at switch going, I don't know, it was almost like 30. I remember Grub driving me for that.
Dang. Okay.
Uh, that was amazing. And then the tail press around the whole end.
Yeah.
Like what a feeling. Like Chad gave me some whips there. Almost killed myself in a whip because I learned like I was riding up in the grass,
Okay.
like just
Yeah. Yeah.
mopping
Yeah.
around.
There were some
And
clips of that in the video of you on the grass and stuff.
yeah, I kind of hurt myself in one of those. I
Okay.
remember, yeah, like it hurt bad. I was like rolling on roots. Rewritten was a
Okay.
really fun technical intro where it's the boat driving and we all hit a double up one
Mhm.
after another. That was really fun to be part of.
Okay.
Um,
Took a lot of tries.
we practiced a lot and
Okay.
we actually got it on the first try.
Oh,
Uh,
sweet.
and then we went and did it again.
Okay.
And yeah, that was kind of all time. Then that was a really fun video to produce because it was all about just like let's make this about team camaraderie. And so at JD's lake and my lake, we built a platform, like an 8 foot by 8 foot platform that we just set out in the lake so that we could all just hang out
Oh,
and
sweet.
players riding around. And we used it for different stunts and camera angles and camera jibs and things like that. That was pretty all time.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, as long as I have known your name, like since the early days of you showing up like in Wakeboard Mag and I can't remember the other one. There was a Canadian one too. I forget what that was called. Maybe Wakeboard. Oh, Wakeboard Canada. I mean, you'd pop up in there all the time too. I feel like we always knew somehow that Shaun Murray was a Christian, or we
Mm,
thought that.
mm.
I don't remember like we didn't have YouTube, so like seeing testimony
Yeah.
videos or whatever. So I don't know how that I got to us, but clearly you've always, to some degree, been vocal about your faith. That I mean, we knew you were a believer. Or can you see different ways in which your faith in Christ has shaped your approach to your wakeboarding career?
Um, I think just like my like who I am,
Okay.
like because when you know that you're known in Christ, then you don't have to go and make who you are to be somebody else amongst other people.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the things that I just kind of I don't think I necessarily made the conscious decision to like do something, but it was more of like I'm just gonna be who I am and do what I feel is natural. And a lot of that comes across as sometimes just goofy, but it's also just in a sense carefree.
Yeah.
Um, but I would say that. But yeah, I definitely have made some not great choices in that, and maybe not represented Christ in the best way. Um,
Did you
but
feel a pressure in the wakeboarding, like in your, in the competing days, that all these people knew you were a believer?
no, it actually
When
took a
maybe
lot.
you made a bad choice or whatever.
It actually took a lot of the pressure off.
Okay.
Because when people are, it's like, hey, we're going out. I had some years where I was like, I'm going out too. Like we would
Yeah.
go out, whatever. But for the most part, it was like, no, I like sleep better. I don't need to go out. And it just kind of took some of those pressures off,
Okay.
to fill the cool shoes or whatever. Um, yeah, I had some years where I was like trying to play that role. But I felt that was way more effort.
Okay.
Being the cool, being
Yeah.
the cool, dip my foot in the party pool is as I put it.
I mean, Wakefest up here in BC when it was in Kelowna. I don't know if you remember those ones.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Eventually it shut down because Kelowna was like, this is too wild, man. We can't.
yeah,
I think they moved it to one other city, and then even that city was like, nah.
yeah.
So
Well,
I'm sure there was, yeah. Sorry, go
you,
ahead.
you had like you had the wakeboard crowd, which could party pretty hard, and
Sure.
then when the locals found out, those two forces combined, and they're like, no, like this can't happen. That happened at
Yeah.
Lake Shasta with board stock as well,
Okay.
exactly. Like board stock was pretty awesome, and it started this core crowd of like wakeboarders, and everybody knew each other, or somehow all these old boats got together in houseboats, and you could go from one houseboat to the next. And then the locals found out,
Okay.
and then it got off the wall, and
It just destroyed.
already just said,
Yeah.
no, we're done. We're done.
Man, I'm sure you remember this too, that the water in Kelowna where they would have it was terrible. Like the
That's
people
it
that
to this day,
wakeboarded there, we were like, why on earth would you have like
especially right where
beautiful
they had
lakes?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right where they like that to this day, people have like asked, like, what are the worst conditions? There's two of them. That's one of
Yeah.
them.
Okay.
The other was behind the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
And both of those places, it was literally hard to stand behind the boat. But it's not to say that I didn't try hard. And one time in Kelowna, I
Sure.
actually won it.
Oh,
And the
did
only
you win there?
I
Oh,
did, and
sick.
the reason I remember it is because, and I didn't want to do it in a disrespectful way, but when
Yeah.
I got up onto the podium, and I had the mic, and it was like a moment to say something, I started to sing "Oh Canada."
Oh, sweet.
So I didn't know many lines though, but I got everybody
Yeah, yeah.
started.
You got the first few out. Yeah, when people in that Kelowna one, when you'd come up to that little like up, flat, down kind of thing,
Yeah.
and when the wave would hit right, and it'd be like a, like a 5 foot ollie to get on that.
Oh, or go under the thing, or all of a sudden, yeah, that was like honestly scary.
That was
Like,
just the part though. It was a party. It was like the wakeboarders were disappointed it was there, and almost disappointed all the other people were there,
yeah,
making a. We just wanted to see wakeboarding,
yeah.
but the party for sure.
You would get one good trick, kind of on the way out, but one good trick on the way back in as you get into that little tucked in spot. But
Yeah,
yeah, that was rough stuff there. But it's beautiful. It's absolutely
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. Nice backdrop for sure. Did you from the beginning or during or still even did you see wakeboarding as a form of ministry, or was it always kind of in your mind separate from ministry?
No, absolutely connected.
Okay.
What I started to see is that, like, kind of growing up in church and being in part of youth group, and I picked up guitar in the end of high school.
Okay.
And so as we were on tour, I was seeing that, I had this habit of going to church on Sundays. And we were competing all the time on the weekends. There used to be a lot of contests, not just the tour stops, the nationals, and the wake stock and board stock, all these different things. So with missing church, I was like looking for some sort of way to kind of keep that relationship, that community. And so we started, just a handful of us, having Bible study. And it was like myself, Gerry Nunn, Rob Herrick, eventually Emily Copeland Durham.
Yeah.
And so it turned into the kind of like, hey, let's get together for Bible study. Okay, now there's so many of us. Let's go meet in one of the conference rooms in the hotels. And as that started to happen, Emily's dad started like paying for us to get a conference room.
Oh,
And
sweet.
he brought a sound system, and he would sing sometimes, and Emily would sing, and I brought my guitar. And so I started like leading worship, and then we would have somebody like with a little praise and prayer request kind of thing. And, like people would trade off sharing a message. I would speak sometimes, and it grew into this thing that, started being called Wake Church. And we would have 100 riders there sometimes. And we would see some riders starting to show up. We're like, well, that's cool. This dude's showing up, or
Yeah.
she's showing up. Like, this is absolutely like a bit of a ministry. And even if it's like they think it's a little bit of like a good luck charm before they compete, bring it on. Let's
Yeah.
go. Like, let's have them here. And so it turned into like an official thing. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily where Wakewell grew from,
Yeah.
but it definitely, like, Wakewell is the one that leads that charge at a lot of the stops still.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with Wakewell and Mark Hager down in Texas,
Yeah, familiar with it. Who's Emily's husband?
Kevin Durham.
That's not what Kevin does, right? Kevin does
Well,
something
he did
else.
he
He did?
he does This Is My Story,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah.
he actually did that for a long time. He was
Okay.
kind of leading the charge and organizing that for a while. So he was absolutely involved.
I worked with the Ride Nature guys for a long time
Yeah,
in up
Mark.
in Naples. Yeah, Mark and stuff.
Yeah.
I met my wife there
Oh,
even
cool.
and so I've known I don't know them well, but the Wake Well guys through Ride Nature through the
Mm,
years at different things.
cool.
And then always hear about Kevin. I don't think I've ever met Kevin or Emily and stuff, but oh,
Yeah.
I mean, I always heard about Wake Church.
Yeah.
Uh, and that grew, I don't know, that's cool to hear the story a bit of where that came from.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely.
want to ask you names of who, people that showed up, but even in that, like, were you surprised time to time on who you had influence on, with not even trying, just conversations that would come out of being in the industry and being open
Yeah.
about your faith?
Yeah, and I definitely it would like have people that otherwise maybe wouldn't feel comfortable saying about that, or like to where even late night, you're out after dinner somewhere, and they'll step aside and be like, man, I've been kind of like struggling
Yeah.
in this, and I feel like God is doing, and like they raise a couple little flags to like have that conversation. And I would absolutely enter into him. That's when I learned that Kevin, like if you ever get to meet him, he can get anyone to open up in an amazing way. And I'm like, I don't know what you have, that gift that you have, getting people to open up. He's ministered to nearly every rider on tour. It's amazing. But yes, yeah, there's absolutely those moments that I think that kind of disarms people to where they can ask.
There was a real acceptance then that you felt within the
Yeah.
industry as you, I don't know if it was a progressive thing as you opened up about faith, or they knew it right from the beginning, but
Yeah.
you were welcomed in that way?
Yeah, yeah. I don't. It wasn't like this. There's that Christian guy. Like
Yeah.
I don't think so. Not that I saw.
Yeah. I was talking to Sonny Sandoval from POD the other week, and I mean, they've always been a pretty outspoken Christian band. And
Hmm.
he said something like, with the other bands in the industry that he's in, he was like, even if they didn't like religion, didn't like, Christianity, kind of were opposed to those things, they would be like, but we know Sonny, and Sonny loves God, and we love that guy.
Yeah,
Did you feel
yeah,
maybe like kind of like
yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Like we don't necessarily agree with what Sean believes, but we love Sean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't like, hey, that works for you. That's fine. I'm gonna keep doing it my way. That it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of like that how that would go. But yeah, I think it was not like this unacceptance, you
Okay.
know. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's to give people courage. I think the point is like to give people just the courage to be strong in who you are and what you believe,
Hmm.
and being rooted in Christ, knowing that foundation and how you live it out is to me the best way. Like,
I mean, you're a good example of that because I think a lot of people would go into, I mean, skate industry, wakeboard industry, whatever, and feel like if I share this, I'm going to be ostracized from this
yeah.
group because there is such a party reputation. I mean, in all kind of the individual action sports.
Well, the thing is like when I look at anyone who does anything, whether it's like skateboarding or surfing or snowboarding or wakeboarding, if you have the opportunity to go do that thing,
Hmm.
it's fun to do, number one, right? And that's a whole nother conversation is why do you do it? But when you get to do that, it's cool if other people see it and then they give you kind of a cool reaction. Like, wow, that was awesome. So you get to share that thing with them.
Yeah.
But if that's all that it is for you, if it's just you getting to share your talent, them seeing it, and then giving you a high five or money or whatever reaction you get from them, that's the end. Well, then what?
Hmm.
But to me, like doing those things and having the opportunities to go and have these abilities and share them, that's to me, that's the conversation starter. Let me tell you about something that's really cool.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about something that matters. Let me tell you about something that matters beyond what I just did. And the cool thing about wakeboarding is I love to share the analogy, and I think this is why God has put me on the water, the analogies of what Christianity, what a faith in Christ looks like between our body position and leaning against the line and so I go speak on that. And that's truly what I want to do is because if if I can get you inspired to go wakeboard, awesome. I think that's great because I know wakeboarding is super fun. It's good for you. It's good community. Like you can have hard falls, but let me show you some techniques how to minimize that. But that's only gonna like go so far. So let me tell you about something that's gonna be eternally important.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's what it's about.
Is
It's
that
not
an
about
is that a kind of evolution of your purpose in wakeboarding? Like, would you say that your main purpose in wakeboarding has changed, grown, transformed through the years?
I've recognized it.
Okay.
I feel like I've known it. I feel like I've known that God has put me here for a reason. Um, and I didn't necessarily know how to state that, and I'm not going to say that I do now, but I do it. I know a lot more. I know a lot better how to do that. And it's fun getting to share that message. So if you want, we can dive into that, but I don't want to digress.
Yeah, no, I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, so it comes down to technique.
Okay.
And the biggest technique when I coach people wakeboarding, the thing that I tell them is that I say the first thing I want you to understand is how to put less effort into something to get more out of it. And one of the biggest ways to do that is to understand that the handle is actually your friend and not your enemy. Because most people, when they're riding, I'm going to stand up. Most people, when they're wakeboarding, they're in a position. I'll try not to be off camera, but they're in a position where they're hanging onto the handle, they're bent over, and they're trying to not get pulled off of the board. Right? The end result of when we're doing anything on the water is we are trying to keep that board, those water skis, whatever it is, we're trying to keep that thing riding, and the rope is pulling it along, and we're the connection between the board and the handle. And so we have this feeling like, okay, handle, I need you to keep going. I need this mode of transportation. I know that you're there, but it feels like you're trying to pull me onto my face. And when we do that, it puts us into this unstacked position. So our muscles are working actually very hard. So when we stand up, if you stand up, this is going to get a little bit weird. But when we stand up, we stack our bones. Right? So our bones are stacked up. We know that. That's how we stand round. But as soon as you bend your knees, now my legs are firing. As soon as we bend our back, now my back, my knees, and everything. Like I'm using my muscles to keep myself up mostly. But if we use our bones, you can actually relax a lot more, and that's why we stand around like this. So it just has to do with physics, right? So when you're in that position, when you're bent over, you're really fighting, trying to get the right relationship between you and the handle, but it feels like it's just trying to pull you off your feet. But as soon as you understand, okay, if I stand up and lean against the line, I'm not only stacked up, but now that handle becomes a point of power, balance, and control. In the same way that, like, if you're on a bus or a shuttle at the airport and it starts to move, you first start off by standing on your own 2 feet. But as soon as that thing starts to move, the first thing we do is we go to grab onto something or someone. Because when you do that, you become a tripod. As soon as you're a tripod, your balance is a whole different strength, right? But if you play that game, you're like, how long can I stay on 2 feet? We always do it at the Orlando airport. How long can you stay here, right? It's completely different compared to if you just grab on and lean against it. So when we wakeboard, and that's what I do, is I teach people, I want you to stand up. I want you to lean against the line. Now watch what happens is now that board is out in front of you. You're pushing through the water. You're not dragging it through the water. You're leaning against the rope. And now that handle becomes a source of your power, balance, and control. So as I'm coaching people, I say, I'm going to show you how this handle should be part of every moment of everything you do. Not cut into the wake, I need you handle, do a trick, fly around, and then all of a sudden, there it is again. No, it's part of the entire 180. It's part of the entire flip. It's part of the entire jump. Whenever you're doing anything, that handle is always part of something. So it also changes your perspective. When you're riding in this kind of hunched over position, your body is naturally looking down. And you're looking at the turbulence, you're looking at the things around you, and it can make you kind of almost self-centered on the problems that are around you, rather than if you stack up and you lean against the line and your arms are relaxed and you let that handle really be what's pulling you along and give you that good connection. It allows you to connect into your core, and I'll talk about that. But what I'm talking about now is perspective. When you go from looking down at the problems that are around you and the turbulence and the rough waters, it's kind of self-centered. But being a believer allows you to realize, like, no, God's got me. I can look up and I can look at others and I can have a much different perspective. And that's truly what we should be doing. When we do that, it's so much more fulfilling and relaxing when we're just, hey, God, you got me.
Yeah.
You're actually there. You're there for me. You're not trying to pull me off my feet. You're not there trying to put me into different places. Like this is where my power, balance, and control comes from. He's part of every moment of everything that I do, and it's just where my foundation comes from. So when I stack up and I start my day reading in the Word, I'm getting my foundation right. I'm leaning against the line. God, let's go through today. Not, Hey, I need you when I'm just having a problem. No, I need you through every moment. You gave me breath. Why wouldn't you have a plan for me? So like my testimony, like it's a whole nother thing, but when you get stacked up and you lean against the line, your core is then what is connected to the handle. And whenever somebody, if you're from the sport of wakeboarding and you've been riding all season, if I could name it for you, what it is when you're feeling strong and you're feeling like, all right, my riding is on point, you are connected to the handle. But when you're like coming out of the gates early in the season, you just feel like my muscles aren't there. I just feel disconnected in a sense. And it's this feeling of like, all right, handle, we got to get connected again. And it happens from rhythm. It happens from consistency. It happens from habits of just doing that. And it's the same thing. It's the same thing in life. So if we're feeling disconnected, we'll just check in. Like, what are your habits? What are your habits like? Are you spending like time like seeking out God, even if you doubt that He's there? Like, are you just God? Are you there? Like, I want to find out. Like, show me. I don't think He's afraid of, like, I don't think He's afraid of questions.
Yeah, for sure.
So, when it becomes our core, when our core is connected to Him, it's a whole different thing. It's a whole different thing. And the coolest thing, this is from Christy Overton, the water skier and awesome Christian woman, and that being a believer, believing in Christ is not this thing of works. That's what so many other religions have made it out to be, is like, what can I do to get to God? But what He has done is He's thrown the handle out to us. Like God is our boat. He is our power source, but we cannot be in the boat. Our sin has removed us and we are dead in the water. But He's thrown a line to us. And all we have to do is understand that His love is so big that He sent His Son out of the boat to come and save us. And so He's lived the perfect life. He died on the cross for our sins. He resurrected. And all we have to do is receive that gift, to say thank you. Yes, I believe, to literally just hang on to that handle.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we can do. There's nothing that we can do to get ourselves up out of the water wakeboarding. You know that. Like, what we have to do is we have to hang on. And that comes from trust. God, I do believe that. I do believe that happened. And I do believe You can do it. And I believe that You already did it. And so, and it's a decision. It's a daily thing.
Yeah.
It's a daily thing. So, man, I didn't know I was going to get into the gospel message today. It's awesome.
Shaun, you're a preacher.
Oh,
I mean, and
man.
you have a really, like how you've thought about this. You have such a unique perspective that is specific to that's come out of your life, your career. I mean, those are analogies that other people could make with other things, maybe, but that you can make it with wakeboarding because of everything that came before. That's
Well,
amazing that God gave you that.
well, and like I said, when I started this was I don't think anymore. I know God has put me into the sport for that picture.
Yeah.
And there's so many other benefits that come from the sport. But I truly believe that's where it starts. But just the picture of God is our towboat and He is going ahead of us. And He knows the rough waters that we're about to come. Like we know He's ahead of us. We don't know what's coming. We know He's going to get us through it. And He's not going to take us anywhere that He can't get us through, that we can't get through with Him. And so,
Oh no, go ahead.
well, and we're going to fall sometimes. Absolutely. But what happens when we fall in wakeboarding? Driver sees it and sometimes they just keep going. But God doesn't. God doesn't miss that. He knows we've fallen. He comes back. And I think the picture of the rope wrapping around us, that's like just Jesus come back, give us a hug. And do we want to keep going? Yeah,
Yeah.
let's learn from that. Why did I fall? How did I fall? Okay, let's avoid that. Let's keep going.
That's beautiful, man. Do you get more chances than you see probably in your YouTube career? You get chances to be at places, be in churches, to be speaking and sharing?
I have some. I have some. I hope to have more.
Yeah.
You know, if God wants it to happen, He'll make it happen.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've had some. But I've been working with I got to speak at this men's breakfast at our church, and I didn't know
Okay.
sometimes I'll go and speak and it'll be like 100 people, you know, and
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be like 20 students, sometimes 200 students. And I thought I was walking into this, men's breakfast, which I thought was gonna be like 15 or 30 guys. I walk in, it was an auditorium of like 500 people. And so I had a message, but I didn't realize until afterward that this guy came up. He goes, "Hey, my name's Ben. I'm the teaching pastor here."
Okay.
He goes, "I really like what you had to say, but in your message, he goes, but you had about 5 messages in there. I want to help you hone it down." And I was like, "That's awesome. I've never had anybody take me through anything like that." So I've
Yeah.
met with him a couple times. I taught him to wakeboard,
Oh,
uh,
sweet.
and I used the BB talking with him, the helmet with the headphones.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, can I borrow that helmet for I'm gonna do a lesson next Sunday?" And he did, and he talked about, and it was kind of uncomfortable for me. I'm sitting out there, and he was talking about how having me, like his coach, was like having the Holy Spirit in your ear throughout the day. And he's like, and he's talking about like having that relationship with God, through the Holy Spirit, is like having a professional coach in your ear, and he's using my name because I taught like, "You're comparing me to somebody." I don't want to
Yeah.
be compared. But thank you. But I gave him that helmet. It sits in his office, and so he and I worked together and got through some messages, and still get together. And so I've really enjoyed doing that, just working on like speaking and getting some of those messages
Yeah.
tightened up.
Do you remember a moment when you started to, I don't know, get a bit of this message or see that, like, oh, this is the purpose God has for me here?
Um,
Or is it just, real progressive through the
Yeah,
years?
kind of. I would say in some sense progressive, but when I heard Christy Overton, she's Christy
Yeah.
Overton Johnson now. She's the daughter of Overton's, like Parker Overton for the Overton's magazine. If you ever saw that, like if you're from boating, you remember Overton's. But
Okay.
um, so when she shared the analogy of God has sent out the handle to us,
Hmm.
and all we have to do is say hit it and get off the dock. Like when she shared that, I was like, gosh, that's an amazing picture.
You might have already said this, but was she sharing somewhere where you were in the crowd?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because she actually sings really well. And so
Okay.
when I go and if I am leading worship somewhere and she's there, I absolutely am going to ask for her to sing with me.
Okay.
And so we kind of create our own service between I play and she speaks.
Sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
As your career has shifted into social media, just before you go here, could I ask you just how, I mean, what's your approach to using that as a Christian athlete? I mean, it can clearly be such a powerful tool, but also a challenge.
Hmm.
Do you have any principles that you've established for how you navigate that?
Um, yeah,
Or has it not been a struggle really for you?
yeah, I don't think so. Like, if I feel like there's a time and a place, and if there's something that I feel like God wants me to share,
Yeah,
I'm not going to pull punches. And I think that's the coolest thing about social media is if people don't want to watch it or are offended, well, then they can say it or they can leave,
sure.
right? And if they want to say it, well, and engage into something, all right, that's okay. I'll enter into conversations. But I feel like we're in such a place right now that there's so many different things that people are afraid to say or are emboldened or bold enough to say,
Hmm.
things that you're just like kind of taken aback by. If, for example, we were at a regatta. There's a nautique event, and where Sunday morning they asked, "Hey, Shaun, do you want to lead a little worship service down on the dock?" And there's a bunch of boats there. I brought my guitar. I printed out some music. I handed it out, and it's everyone just standing on the dock, and there's literally people that are just passing by that are on vacation or cruising by in boats or whatever. And as I'm passing it out, I go, "Hey, I know this seems weird to everyone, but I want you to realize, like, think about the music and the things that people wear and say, and they feel completely fine doing that in front of us. So I feel completely comfortable worshiping Jesus out loud right now. So let's go." So it's to say, like, people are very comfortable about saying weird and offensive things.
Sure.
And so if I'm gonna say, like, if I'm gonna bring up the name of Jesus and it offends people, all right, whatever. Like, but I don't know. I feel like people these days are more accepting of Jesus more than politics. So they'd rather you
Yeah.
bring up Jesus than bring up politics
Yeah,
these
for
days.
sure. Well, what about this angle of it? I mean, you've had some level of fame for a long, I mean, basically, I feel like your life. Uh, Does that help you deal with, I don't know, the likes and the follows and the the desire that social media creates for just applause and
Mm.
praise. And I mean,
Yeah,
because that would be a challenge for a lot of people, right? To make
yeah,
videos, oh, it gets views, you get sucked in. That now I'm making
yeah,
content just to get more
yeah.
views.
That that is a fine line that we walk because um, like my work is based upon success,
Hmm.
but that's in anyone's job.
For sure.
It's in anyone's job. It's just with social media, it's literally like a number in front of everyone's face all the time. And so I try not to get pulled down that road. Um, and I really try to base it upon like, what do I feel like I want to share? Because I feel like people will get something out of it.
Okay.
Not because I think they're gonna, because I think that it'll go viral because it's funny or someone's getting hurt or whatever. Like I don't want to do it for that reason. I want to do it because I'm like, that was a tip that here, I'll share this. Um, I have a stack of note cards that when I'm coaching people, I'll say a phrase. I've learned more about wakeboarding through coaching because I have to think about what I do or what I see them not doing or trying to do,
Okay.
and so I'll come up with phrases. And and while I'm coaching, I'll literally just send myself a quick note. And so when I get here to the computer, I will write it down on a note card, and these are my ideas for videos because I think, and these are
Oh,
them.
sweet.
So this is like, um, I don't know. Here's something. Surf zones.
Okay.
When I explain wake surfing, I break it up into zones because that allows you to kind of like have a geographical location of where you are and how much wave. A lot of people don't realize um, like how big their wave really is depending on the
Sure.
boat. And so I have that as a reference. Here's another one. Harder to get up when you're tied low. People have asked like, can you get up? Like so. I'm going to measure. I hope to do this. I want to put a scale on the rope. I've done it with some other things to see how much force is put on the rope if you're tied down low.
Oh,
So
interesting. Yeah.
because you're physically getting pulled
Sure.
into the water's, that wall of water, versus lifted up out of it. Have you ever ridden a really short line of the cable?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, it's wild. It's wild.
Yeah,
Like
because it'd
it,
be just shooting you up. Hey?
yeah, there's a rope that's called the Indian line that when it gets to the corners, it physically doesn't touch the water.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and so if you go and look up some videos, like Parks and I have done it. I did it
Yeah.
on a pair of junior combo skis. So it's to say that when you have a much less angle of a rope, it
Yeah.
will physically lift you off the water. So when people are tied low, to my point here, when you're tied low, I think it's physically harder to get up, but I want to measure that. So
That's awesome.
to answer your question, do I get pulled down that road? I can, like I do want to be successful, but at the same time, I want my success to be based upon people's personal
Yeah.
success. Like I want them to get something out of it.
I think you're in a sweet place as a dad because I mean, your career now is largely on the internet, on social media, these things. You're setting an example every day for your kid. I mean, your daughters how to do it right or how to do it wrong,
Yeah, yeah,
which is pretty sweet if you can do it in a healthy way and they get to see
yeah,
that like, oh, it's possible to use social media
hmm
and even make a career out of it and do it well and do it in
yeah,
a way that glorifies the Lord.
yeah. And I try to be conscious of like what I tell my kids when I tell people is that like I think it's important that we are creators more than consumers.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't mean like YouTube creators. I mean creators of moments, skills, knowledge, whatever it is. And so you like there's those moments that we consume. It's okay to scroll once in a while, but how much are you consuming? And so I do think it's very important to have that balance. Um, but I think that's one of the biggest reasons that I just stepped away from a 25-year relationship with Nautique is because I have this drive within me to create more for a bigger, broader audience.
Okay.
Because I want to share all of the different ways that people can get on the water.
Yeah.
Nautique makes an amazing boat. They make one of the best boats, if not the best boat. Um, but not everybody can get into that, or not everybody
Mhm.
likes that. Some people want to be in a different brand. Some people can't afford to be in a fancy brand. And so I- I've made that choice because like I just I've got the stack of note cards that doesn't necessarily all fit behind, you know, those boats. And so I want to get that message out because I personally know, you know, the benefits of getting out on the water with your family and friends, and I want to cast a bigger net.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of pressure for you doing it, but as a observer consumer, I'm stoked on the way you're transitioning your career, man. The first one with Centurion was awesome.
Thank you.
Stoked to see more. But Shaun, thank you for your time. This, I hope this is helpful to people that listen to my congregation and beyond that. This is also just like a childhood dream that I finally taught to Shaun Murray. So I appreciate, man. I appreciate your time.
Oh, I love it.
And
I
thank you
love
for
it.
consistently for years being such a, I don't know, an example to us. I mean, little wakeboarders growing up that could look to you as like someone claiming Christ and continuing to enjoy the sport.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful. I'm not ignorant to the fact that I'm a 48-year-old professional wakeboarder. That shelf life should have been done a long time ago. So God's got a different plan with my life, and
Yeah,
I try to lean on that. You know, he created this world, and he created you and I. And I think that if we just step back and go, all right, if you took the time to do that, you probably got a good plan. So
yeah,
tell me about it. Let's, take it through today. I'm going to leave with this.
yeah. Please.
So the phrase that I've been living, and I try to literally, this is how I try to like live out like my faith and opportunities, is do now well. And it sounds almost grammatically incorrect, and that's what I share. Like I've been sharing this a lot, but what that means is whatever you're doing right now, do it well. If you're sleeping, like don't be laying in bed scrolling on your phone. I'm talking to myself right now. If you are waking up, wake up well. If you're talking to someone, do that well. Don't be distracted. If you're listening, if you're driving, try not to multitask. If you are washing a dish, do that well. If you, whatever it is at that moment, do it well. And I think it's one of the best ways for us to go through the day. But it also, in a biblical sense, it also says, don't worry about tomorrow. For
Yeah,
tomorrow has enough troubles. And so just really, whatever you're doing right now, pray without ceasing. And I think that's a great way to go through do now well.
that's good, man. I appreciate that.